answer any of them, that's fine. You can just pass.
Okay. Pass.
You can't do it for all of them.
Oh, okay.
All right. What's your earliest memory of Grandpa?
Oh, man. I've got to probably think back second, third grade. And probably, the biggest things would be, just working on the farm, doing all the different farm chores, working cattle, walking the cornfields, putting up hay, all those different memories.
What's your favorite memory of him?
Probably the best time we ever had, I don't know if it's how you describe it, was when we did our fishing trip. Grandpa took, would have been Bob, Doug, myself, and then we went with Uncle Ivan, and then Merle and Gerald, and we went out fishing out in the sandhills. It turned out to be probably more of they wanted to go to all the sales out there, the cattle sales, because he was into the Elgin livestock, the sale barn, so that's what he enjoyed doing. So yeah, so we did fishing, and we had such a good time. Just got to hang out with the cousins and dad and uncle. So that was a good time. Mm-hmm.
What's your worst memory of Grandpa?
I don't know that I really would have to say that I had any bad memories. I mean, he wasn't a real talkative person around us kids, or wasn't like he was a harsh disciplinarian or anything like that. He was for the most part with us kids, I always thought he was pretty even tempered, and so I don't know that I really had what you could call a bad memory. I mean, he was always good to us, and being busy on the farm, he didn't always have a lot of time to do some of the things that parents are expected to do today, or that they do today, like going to all the ball games and stuff. But he was always there when you needed him. So.
Did he ever discipline your kids?
Oh yeah. I mean, he has his own way of disciplining. Like, especially when you got into high school, if you were out drinking the night before, he knew that you were drinking. He wouldn't give you crap about drinking. You shouldn't have been out drinking. He would just make sure he got you up extra early and sent you out to the hog barn and clean up hog shit, or send you out to the chicken barn and clean up chicken shit. So yeah, so he had his silent way of disciplining you, as opposed to, getting out the switch or whatever.
What was it like working with him?
Oh, it was good for the most part. One thing we were talking about downstairs was his lack of patience with animals. Being around the guy, if you didn't know, you'd always think, he's pretty cool, calm, and collected. But occasionally with the livestock, he would get a little on the upset side if a hog would go the wrong way, or if a calf would get out, and all of a sudden you'd be out in the pasture chasing a calf across the pasture in the pickup, and you'd be flying over the sand hills and stuff, and hitting the top of your head on the pickup, because he was rather upset at a calf for getting out or something. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
What kind of values do you think you try to instill in your kids?
Oh, all the good ones: honesty, integrity, work ethic. I can remember one time. This was one summer when I came back to work when I was in college, and I was working at the co-op, and I was working with cousin John Earhart, and it was kind of one of those days. John said, go ahead and go home. I'll punch out for you in like an hour or something. I said, and Dad, of course, asked, how come you're home early? I said, well, John said to go home and, check out. And he'd check in and he'd, punch my time clock. And Dad he didn't like that. He was basically, you should work to earn your pay. So, he definitely had a great work ethic, and he tried to instill, the honesty, integrity, and all those things in us. So.
What was he like as a person? What were his characteristics and mannerisms?
Oh, well, again, he was in social settings. He was just a very, very friendly. He could talk to anyone, or relate with anyone. He never had any problems. Getting along with people in general. As far as manners, like out in the hayfield, he was always happy, bubbly. The boys would be up in the stack, and he'd be singing, because you didn't have a radio on the tractor. So Dad would be, singing different songs out there, and he just had that personality that, he just entertained him. He could entertain himself, and so yeah.
Tell me a funny story you remember about Grandpa.
Funny story. I gotta think on that one. Can we come back to that one?
We can come back to that one.
Okay.
If you had one more day to spend with him, what would you do?
Oh boy. I'd probably just like to just hang out with him today, maybe go to like a baseball game or something, and just, talk about life, and maybe get a little more info. He never really talked about, obviously he was in the service, but that's something he never really talked about or related to much. But he was all over the world, as far as Japan and the Philippines and that area, and we knew he was there, but he never really ever relayed much of what his experiences were. So yeah, I would just enjoy spending time with him, just finding out some of the things that he did, during that stage of his life.
You talked a little bit about your trip to the Sandhills for fishing. Did you guys take any big vacations together, the family?
I think when I was 5 or 6, we went out to Denver because Aunt Rainey was out there. And then again, I think the other big family vacation would have been about when I was maybe a sophomore in high school. I think the older siblings stayed home, but Jeff and Craig and I went out with Mom and Dad. Again, we went out to Denver and hung out with Irene. So and that was my first chance to drive on the interstate. 55 miles an hour is all, but yeah, still got to drive on the interstate. So.
Do you remember what he liked to do? Did he have any hobbies?
I'm trying to think what he did, because it's not like he golfed or hunted. We'd go fishing on occasion, but I think he liked to socialize with his mostly with family and stuff and friends, and so that was from what I recall as far as his hobbies or what he really enjoyed doing. He just enjoyed, I think, being around family and stuff and sharing time with them.
Did you think of a funny story?
No, I didn't think of a funny story.
All right, that's all I got.
Okay.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Thanks.
Yep.